people don't always remember, like what you did, but they make you, they remember how you made them feel. And I think that it's important to like, I don't know. And I think that too with my team too. Like I always want them to look at me and say, he was a good man. He did the right thing.
Got questions, we bring the facts. From proven pros who walk the tracks. Business life, no smoke, just flames. Ask the experts, David Williams brings the game.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Experts. I'm Andy, and I'm going to be your host today. Welcome to another episode where we sit down with leaders and difference makers in the insurance industry every week to bring you guys the knowledge and the wisdom to help you get to the next level. Today, I've got the privilege of interviewing Mr. Mike Hild. I'm near and dear to my heart, number one, because he's an Ohioan like me. So we've got that going for us. And really excited for this. Mike spent nearly 2 decades as a lieutenant with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, where he served as a SWAT team leader, drug enforcement commander, and was even awarded for Valor in the line of duty. And then in 2010, Mike transitioned into entrepreneurship, opening his Allstate agency in Englewood, Ohio. And since then, he's become a 5-time Agency Achievement Award winner, Best in Company recipient, and even received the Ray Lynch Community Service Award. If you guys don't know much about that award, that's a huge deal for his impact. So we're going to dive deep into leadership, discipline, training, and really how Mike has carried lessons from law enforcement into running a thriving agency. So Mike, it's really good to see you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Eddie. OH.
IO, let's go.
Got to get that out of the way.
Oh, 100%. Hopefully we have another run this year. I think we have a good shot on that. So
yeah, it should be good. So
absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thrilled to have you here. And man, it's not very often that I get to, speak with somebody who's had the background that you did in law enforcement. I mean, you spent nearly 2 decades as lieutenant with Montgomery Sheriff's Office. And I'm curious, actually, way back long before insurance, what initially drew you into law enforcement, like in the first place?
Well, second generation law enforcement. My father was a retired lieutenant, and I was a dad at 18. So I swore that I wasn't, going to follow in the footsteps and go into law enforcement. But it was kind of the way to pay my way through school and all that. It started off and went to the department and started working nights and going to school during the day and kind of paid my way through school and all that. So, and then when I got in there, I saw, there were guys with master's degrees. I think cops have this reputation of being like these cavemen or, dumb people or whatever, but they're smart guys that were there because they wanted to be there. They had a master's degree or they were, and they just were there to serve. And that's, so I kind of fell in love with like serving and that's kind of how I got into it.
Man, that's incredible. And your involvement, I think, like, for guys like me from the outside looking in, the idea of like SWAT is really, really interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of shows and movies out there about it, right? But it's sort of like the special forces of law enforcement. And so I know that, for you didn't start that way. It's not like, I don't think you day one walk on the field and it's like, hey, Mike, let's do SWAT. So what was that transition like? Why and how did you end up going from? Well, what were you doing before that within the department, and then what did the transition look like, and what are some of the things you got involved in that part of your career?
So I started off in corrections, and that wasn't great. It was a very smelly job. Working in a jail and fighting all the time. Working midnights and a lot of drunk people coming in and drugs and all that. So, and then we had a trainer that was a Vietnam vet, and he gave me some really sage advice. He said, when I was going off to Vietnam, he said, a friend of mine said, if you're going to go to Vietnam, he said, join the Army Rangers, like try out for the Army Rangers because, they get the best weapons and the best training, and your survivability rate is much higher in Vietnam. So I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to be a cop, if I'm going to be a street cop, I want to be like on the best unit, carry the best weapons and all that. And just always kind of looked up to the guys that were on the team. So then, within a few years of being on the department, it was work. It was not an easy process to get on the team. With Dayton and Montgomery County, we had I think 4,000, 5,000 cops, in the area that would try out for 30 spots. So you're kind of the best of the best in the area. So So it took a lot of work to get to that. But I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, I want to be like the best prepared and the best equipped for the job.
Wow. And then did I read somewhere that you got into even undercover drug enforcement, or did I misread that?
Yeah, no, so I was a commander of the unit. And
Oh,
right
wow.
before I retired, I was the commander. Obviously, I mean, with the haircut and all that, you definitely can see, like you should not, anybody that buys or sells drugs to me should definitely go to jail for the rest of their life because they're just not very smart. So, but I was the commander of the unit. So we used to, we did, vice work and drug enforcement and that was a really different, really different career path for sure. Like just, the plain clothes and like sitting in bars all the time and, doing, drug transactions, listening to, informants, going in and buying drugs and doing some major deals and stuff like that. And it was just kind of crazy. Yeah. But at the end, I mean, it kind of led to the same thing, like the SWAT thing. At the end, you go through the door, you take your team, you go through the door and you bust the bad guy. So it was a lot of fun. So really different.
Man, and then at some point you had like a turning point where you decided, hey, I'm going to do a new career here. I'm going to get into insurance, right? Really curious, like where and what that point looked like for you, and like why you made that decision and made that transition, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. So, I blew out my knee, like in a foot chase or whatever. That's what ended my police career, and so I cashed out all my sick time and all that, and I had exactly enough to, because when you start with Allstate, you have to show them money. You don't have to like necessarily spend the money, but you have to show them that you have money to open a business and run a business. And so I sank all that into opening an Allstate agency. I just kind of I was looking for a franchise to buy into, and the franchise fees were all super expensive, and Allstate didn't have franchise fees. So I thought, okay, let's give this a go. And I knew like I was betting on myself and the leadership principles I learned in SWAT and all that. Like if you can be a team leader on a SWAT team, if you can lead 30 type A individuals and be in charge of them, then I felt pretty good about my skill set and my leadership abilities. I was a trainer on the department, so I've got a natural training background, and I knew that I could train a team and make them, one of the best out there and stuff. So I kind of was betting on myself. I took that last, it ended up being like $50,000 was my cash out from, 18 years or whatever. And I took that and I rolled the dice on it and put it into an Allstate agency, which was crazy now because I could have paid off my cars and my house and just lived on my my retirement check. But that's not how I'm wired.
100%. It must be what they're putting in the water in Ohio. My father is the same way. He'll be probably going until he's 90,
Yeah, you got to go. Yeah.
Gotta rock and roll.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I got for you is like in the transition, maybe the first 3 to 6 months, right? And you come from this long career deep into law enforcement, into entrepreneurship. Was that transition like harder than you expected? Was it easier than you expected? Was it different than you expected? Or was it, what did that experience look like?
Yeah, it was different than I expected. And in some ways it was harder. I mean, leadership principles and like self-discipline and leadership principles are the same. Those are universal, like I think in any career field. And so I had that. I had a good foundation. The thing I didn't count on was not everybody sees the vision. Not everybody is a good, like to be a good leader, you first have to be a good follower. Before I was a good leader on the SWAT team, I was an entry team leader. My team went in the door and got the bad guy when it was time to do that, whether it was a hostage situation or a drug raid or barricaded subject or whatever the case. So I knew my leadership principles were sound in that environment. But I mean, in a paramilitary organization, they have to listen to you. When you hire people, they don't always see the vision. So I think the biggest thing that I learned is like getting people to like see the vision. Like, and like if you look at the Marine Corps, right? Like if you ask anybody in the Army, not everybody in the Army knows like the story of the Army or whatever. They're not going to tell you like the history, but if you ask a Marine about like the origin of the Marine Corps and the Tun Tavern and how it all started, I mean, they're indoctrinated into the Marine Corps. Like they believe, like they are told the story and the history and the buy-in. And so that's one thing that I kind of adopted for my agency is like, this is where we come from. This is where we're going. This is our history. This is what our belief set and our value system here. And so before I hire anybody, I kind of have that talk with them and say, you got to be part of the buy-in. And if this is not your core values, if you don't share the same core values as us, then you're not going to be a good fit for this team.
And that's huge. I wrote down getting people to see the vision as one of maybe the biggest hurdles. It's like you have this vision, you have the discipline, but you're right. It's not do this and jump and they'll jump. There's that human element there that you got to deal with. Man, that's really interesting that you'll take people all the way back to like the mission of the agency. Probably I would assume also like the purpose of insurance in general, right, is to protect people. So like training your team to go out as an act of service rather than active, like I'm going to serve myself. So that's super interesting. Now I do want to get into some of your culture, but one of the things that I'm also curious about before we get there is going to be, coming from an environment where you had to make, I'm sure, I don't know everything about it, but I'm sure you had to make like split second decisions or very short term, like, A or B in high stress environments. Yeah. Literally like life and death environments. What would you say? Imagine how many people are watching that have never had that experience. What would you say to an agency owner in terms of the way that shaped you in the way that you lead your team today? And like somebody who doesn't have that 19, 20 years of experience in law enforcement in a high stress environment, like if you were to pass down one lesson, that's probably maybe one of the superpowers you have from your previous experience, what would you want another agency owner to kind of borrow from that without having to go through the investment of the career that you put in to learn it, essentially?
Yeah. So so as a trainer, I was a department trainer and a SWAT team trainer, and we always had the saying that like you have to take your mind where your body may need to go someday. So you have to take your mind where your body may need to go someday. And when I teach self-defense or I'm an NRA in Ohio concealed carry instructor and teach, advanced shooting tactics and that kind of thing. And you have to take your mind where your body may need to go. And that is like, you have to mentally prepare yourself. You have to simulation training. When I was actually in a shooting, I was in a shooting through a window from 15 feet away where, a subject and I are exchanging gunfire. My submachine gun jammed and I had to sweep it out of the way and like pull my pistol and shoot back. So 4 rounds, just the rounds going past my head. And the one thing that prepared me for that incident was like, we used to get into shootings all the time with like we had a week where every week we would go to like a housing complex, like an abandoned housing complex. And we would run, simulations with the drug unit would be the bad guys. When I was, before I was on the drug unit, but I was on the SWAT team, the drug unit guys would be our bad guys. And we would go in and do a drug raid on them or do a hostage situation or whatever. And we used the paint rounds and they hurt if you get hit, and paint is a good teacher. But those simulations were everything. I mean, taking my mind, going through those simulations and stuff. So then like, transitioning that to the insurance world, it's like the role play and preparing yourself for conversations, overcoming objections, the things that are concrete. Because when my people get on the phone or they get an objection, I want them to own that. Like someone's always like selling in a conversation, right? It's from the one movie or whatever. It's like, you're either being sold or you're selling and
so, seller be sold. Yeah. Seller be sold.
Yeah. So you have to own that, conversation. So I'm just like in like as a cop, you have things on your tool belt or you have things on your load bearing vest where, am I going to pull a taser? Am I going to pull a baton? Am I going to pull a firearm or whatever? Well, and it's the same thing in the insurance world. I transition that thought over and say, you have to have tools in your toolbox and be ready for that, because if the only tool in your toolbox is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. And we don't want that. So you got to have a lot of tools for any situation. So that's what we're trying to prepare people for. So mental preparedness and just, get them to buy into the culture and they want to do well, and then give them the tools to do well and to own every conversation. I don't care what the person says to them. They've got something in their toolbox to say back. And honestly speaking, at the end of the day, I want them to kind of be cocky about it. I want them to be like, you know what, like if you're not coming with us, then honestly, maybe you don't deserve us, because we're working, like we do bust our tails here for you. And the difference is service. People leave us. And the ultimate compliment is when people leave us on price, they come back for a quote later on because they love us in service.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, 100% love that. And like, I think that's going to be, one of the things that really sets apart an agency like yours that continues to grow and continues to set records and be consistently great between the one that doesn't, right, is that exact element you're talking about, which is not selling on price, building value in the way that you guys operate and the standard you hold yourselves to. And it's becoming harder and harder to find. So I think it's a really special thing when you encounter a company like that. You just want to do more business with them. I want to do more business with you. And honestly, I think people need more great, ethical, upstanding people in their corner in their life. And there's only so many places they can get that. The person that sells them their car, their insurance agent, their mortgage broker, their realtor. There's a short list, right, in people's life of who they actually work with. So it's a big deal when most people drop the ball and they're selfish and they're doing things for themselves versus like, hey, like we are the best, but it's because we put in the work, and we might not be the cheapest, but like we're going to come through for you. That's massive. Really, really big.
Integrity is everything. And like, I still, I hold to those standards. And I also tell people when they start here, if you're going to try to fit a square peg in a round hole, you're going to do something that doesn't belong. You're not going to be here very long. You don't stay in this business, and especially with Allstate, with having like compliance issues. So telling people the truth, like answering the phone when they call, do what you say you're going to do. If you tell them you're going to call them back, call them back. If you can't call them back right now, tell them when you're going to call them back.
100%. And that's like where I found a lot of referrals come from as well. Cause I don't want to give you to my cousin if you're going to treat me like that, but if you treat me great, I want to give you to everybody. I'm sure you get a lot of referrals too.
Yeah.
Well, kind of diving into the law enforcement days, what's one juicy, awesome, exciting? No, what's one story from your law enforcement career that best taught you about staying calm when everybody else is freaking out? And how have you applied that like into the agency world?
It's such a funny transition. I'm so glad you asked that, because like it really is like so funny, because when I started here in 2010, like we would have a customer come in and they're, F-bombing people and just acting, and my staff would get so upset, and it was like their feelings were hurt. It was like the biggest emergency ever, and they didn't know how to handle it. And now my staff now just is like, okay, like you can't talk like that here. You got to go. And they're just so much more in command of the situation. The command presence. So as a field training officer, as a cop, we teach command presence. Command presence is like you go into a domestic situation, you got to be like, okay, I need you to sit down over there. And it, like, if the person is like in your face and they're like yelling at you and stuff like that, then you're not in charge of the situation. So you have to have command presence. So you're in control. It's just like a sales situation. You're either selling or you're being sold. And so, the one story, when I was, I actually received 2 awards for Valor. The one time was a buddy of mine made a traffic stop. He gets a guy out of the car, and the guy's got, a bulletproof vest on, and he's like he's patting him down. The guy's kind of like resisting a little bit, but he puts him in his car and stuff. He goes, "Hey, can you go up and check the car? There's a bunch of other guys in there. The windows are fogged up and all that." And I open the back door of the car, and there's a guy reaching for an AK-47. They had these 4 guys. They called themselves the Dead Presidents. If you ever seen the movie Dead Presidents, where they wear the masks and all that, well, they were robbing people around Dayton, had killed somebody the night before with those AK-47s that were on the floorboard of the car. So I did not have a chance to pull my pistol because he was already like reaching, and I was already engaged and stuff. So I jumped in the back seat with him and started fighting him for the control of this AK-47. And then I'm elbowing him in the face and all that. And I kind of half, stumbled out of the car. I had the 2 guns underneath my arm, and there was a big pursuit and all that. Dayton police ended up catching the guy or whatever. There were 4 guys total, and they were all prosecuted for that murder from the night before and all the robberies that they had committed. But during that time, I mean, the mind is such a funny thing. You see, like, if you study shooting incidents and all that, you know that like time is like slowed down, and you can there's a lot of things that under a stressful situation that your mind does to you that and it's an interesting study, like the distortion of time and distortion of your hearing, like gunshots go off but you don't hear them, and auditory exclusion, that kind of thing. So but I mean, so I've been through a lot of situations like that, a few shootings in my career, and a few critical ones. I mean, a lot of critical incidents, but the areas that I worked were pretty busy areas in Dayton. So, but to transition that over, it's just like being in command of a situation, like just teaching my people command presence in the office. Like, do not let someone, like, one, you don't make enough money here to have someone come in and like put you down, or to yeah, I think every agent has had somebody come in and start cussing and all that stuff. And we're all Christians here. We don't believe in that kind of thing, like that kind of language and stuff like that. And we're not going to tolerate it. And so if you want to talk like that, then we start playing the closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
I love that.
Yeah.
In a previous career that I was in a very, very intense training environment with a very heavy hitting owner that it was intense. It was like the NFL combine for sales essentially. And one of the things he would always say is like, when you are in a sales situation and somebody hits you with something unexpected, he's like, you will always default to what you know. And if you don't know it, you're just going to go into default mode every single time. So when you see a salesperson deer in the headlights, what's it going to take to earn your business? He's like, that's the situation I'm talking about, is when it's like, well, what do we got to do to earn your business, versus being in like what you're saying and commanding the situation. I've been here before. Yeah. So one of the things that I've seen, within your agency, and I think the way that you guys operate, is that training is like a really important core principle, so that when you get in those high stakes situations, obviously nothing like an AK in the back of a seat, right? But it's maybe a high stake business situation, an intense close, an upset customer. Training, I'm sure, has to be a huge part of that. And you preparing your team, like when you said, I love this, I wrote this down, take your mind where your body may need to go one day, right? So I'm curious where, you've kind of drawn parallels and brought in your training experience into your sales team, and what that looks like just from your, previous role to what you do today, and how you execute on that, that level of preparation, so that your team knows, okay, I can go there. I've been there before with Mike, and like he's taken us through that. But how does that actually like materialize in your business?
Yeah. So we have like team meetings, and we do, role play training and scenario based training and stuff like that, because I always tell them, like when I bring them in, I tell them like the example, the SWAT shooting that I was in, where I was, firing through a window from 15 feet away, and I transitioned from my submachine gun to my pistol. That's something we had trained on the range. And when my primary weapon, my submachine gun, jammed, I just swept it out of the way. I didn't think about it. And it was like, they said it was a matter of like seconds, like a second to transition. So you don't train to succeed. You train until you can't fail. You don't train till you get it right. You train till you can't get it wrong. And so that's what, we do that enough. Like we work on the scenarios together, and my team, the culture here is so fantastic, because, I'm a little lazy sometimes, like when it comes to like, I don't stand over them and stuff, but like like together, like collectively, we've got this system where it kind of like takes care of itself. They just like, they talk to each other and like, hey, what do you do here? And they're just so well prepared for anything. And then we'll come back and like tell a story about how they won it or something, or like, yeah, like this customer was like, whatever. And I kind of schooled them on this or whatever. So, but in a respectful way, they're like, we celebrate their wins. We talk about like, because you have to, you got to celebrate the wins. You don't, you always learn from the losses. You never kill a warrior in training. So if somebody takes a hit in training, you don't have permission to die. And in this case, like if they take a hit and they lose something that they should have kept, we just go over it and we just kind of figure it out, and like how do you get better next time? So but it's always about like taking it to the next level.
100%. And that's man, it's so interesting just hearing from you the background versus what you do now. And it starts to make a lot more sense to me as I sit here thinking like, it wasn't given to you. You just took a lot of these principles and you like, they're part of your DNA. And then you're able to carry that into the agency. So this is just really, really interesting to me. And when you dive in and look at like discipline, right? Another thing, when I think law enforcement, when I think SWAT, when I think, everything that you've accomplished and achieved, even prior to the insurance days, there's this concept of discipline, and like what I say I'm going to do for you. And even through the tough moments, I'm going to lean in and push extra hard to get through the tough season. Yeah. I'm curious for you, like what habits keep you consistent in your own life? Because I know everything rolls downhill, and the leader, the way that you wake up in the morning, what you do outside the office, the way you carry yourself, the disciplines in your life for sure carry through to the way that you lead, the way you run the agency, and the energy that rubs off on your team. So I'm curious, maybe even what people can't see when you're in the office, what as a life, right? What are maybe some of the habits, the disciplines, or things that you feel like help you kind of hold it together and like come in at your best for your team?
Yeah, I mean, consistency. So like it really comes down to like core values, and self-discipline is like a core value. And that's, that is something. So every day, consistency wins the day. And I've been accused of being like OCD or whatever because by my kids actually. But every morning, 5 a.m. I'm at the gym, and just kind of doing the same things because the same, and that being said, I mean, you have to do the same things, but you also have to pay attention to like things that are going on around you, what your best competition is doing. Like, like some of these guys are scaling unbelievably. I mean, and man, I like credit to them. Some of the guys in Ohio are really scaling up so unbelievably. But and so I've taken kind of a lesson from them, and I've kind of changed some of my business model. But it's the same thing every day. Like we hold ourselves accountable every day, and I hold myself accountable, and I show my team that I'm accountable because like, I come from an environment where you can't have a bad day. You can have you're going to have off days, but you can't have a bad day because it could cost somebody their life. If I'm not paying attention or if my head is somewhere else, like you have to have your head in the game every single day, because like in the world I come from, if I'm covering a guy, if we're on a window or we're going through a door and I'm his cover, or a guy's got like a beanbag gun or a taser or something like that, and I'm his lethal cover, and I'm not paying attention that day because I got in a fight with my girlfriend or like I'm mad at somebody or my head is somewhere else. Like you got to have your head in the game every single day, and you got to give it like 110% every day as much as you can. And if you're not ready, then you need to work on yourself and get ready. But consistency, I mean, just consistent good habits win the day, I would say. And that's, like doing the same things every time. You're always looking for, and as an agency I'm always looking at the next best thing. Like what's the next, lead source, or what's the next marketing campaign, or what's the next best thing that I can do. And that's my job as a leader. But I also like, there are things in my life that I have to just be very, very consistent with. And that's what wins the day. And training that into my team is consistency, and like, take care of yourself, take care of your family, like, and when you're on the job, I mean, you give it, I'm not going to stand over your shoulder and you know what to do, the processes and all that. You got to follow the processes and make it happen.
Absolutely, man. That's a really, really good insight. And here's something I hear agency owners struggle with all the time. And I don't know how many other agency owners you talk to. I don't know if people call you and say like, Mike, can you give me some advice? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But in your experience, kind of like brushing shoulders and seeing other operations, what do you think is the biggest mistake agency owner leaders make when trying to hold their team accountable?
What I've seen over the years, and I I was on the NAB and all that, and the regional advisory board when they had that and all that, and so and I've talked to a lot of agents, and I think like just to be like successful as an agency owner, you have to like I say that I don't stand over my people to make sure that they're being consistent, but I do inspect their work. I do inspect what I expect, and I do hold them accountable. And you have to be like, I think that where people have failed is like they just like, I'm not here to be friends with people. I'm here to like be the boss of this agency. So I don't play the boss card ever, but I am in charge, and they quietly know that I'm in charge, and that I'm, if they're not meeting expectations, we're going to have a talk about that. But you should never like, I mean, I believe in carrots and sticks. I've got a master's degree in business and HR management. And so, I believe in carrots and sticks, but also like, you should never have a stick without like a teachable moment. You should never have a stick without saying, okay, you made a mistake here. Just like if I'm doing entry training, I'm bringing a new guy through the shoot house and we're doing entry training and he makes a mistake. You never kill a warrior in training, right? You got to tell him like, okay, you made a mistake here. This is how you do it better next time. And then also like just checking the work, like with your people in the office, just making sure, like I read the phone reports every day. I make sure that they're making their phone calls. I make sure that they're, how many quotes they're doing. I look at their talk time and all that stuff because that's my job. But I don't beat them over the head with it. But if we need to have a talk, we will. But like they just holding them accountable and making sure that they're holding themselves accountable. They're all very money motivated. I'm very lucky with the team I have right now. They want to be here. They want to make money and make sales and all that. And so my job is to be the coach and to make them better and then hold them, to some degree, hold them accountable. And I think that's where a lot of agents don't make it is they're afraid to be accountable or be, it comes down to command presence. Like if I'm training you, Andy, on the street as a cop, or you're a new SWAT guy, then I'm gonna watch you. And if you can't be in charge of a situation, then you don't belong there. And it's the same thing with sales. If you can't be in charge, if you can't hold people accountable and stuff, then you don't really belong there.
Wow, that's powerful the way you put that. Yeah, you don't belong there. I love as well, like never giving out that discipline, that stick without a teachable moment. That's huge. And one thing that I learned in 2017 is I brushed shoulders with the guy by the name of Dave Anderson. A lot of you probably don't know who this guy is, but he's a leadership coach in the automotive industry. And I like to follow the auto industry and the trends of sales and training there as well, because it's such an intense environment for sales. You've got less than 2 dealership shop per every purchased vehicle. So you've got to be on top of your game, because if that customer walks out, they're about to go buy from your competitor up the street. And so there's a lot of money, a lot of time put into the training organization within auto dealerships. So anyway, the one thing he said too is he's like, hey, the whole carrot and stick thing, he's like, the problem is a lot of owners don't set expectations to begin with. They don't get it in writing. It's not, they're almost afraid to say it. It's like they'll say it under their breath. But if you have a clear expectation for an activity level, a way that you conduct yourself, a time that you show up to work, how you dress, whatever, right? He's like, it would be like yelling at your kid for doing something wrong that you never told them was wrong. Yeah. And they're just going to end up confused and angry and upset when it could have become, we both knew this was going to happen. And that's why we're sitting down having this talk. But like, I'm not here to like slap your hand. I'm here to help you. Like, how can I help you go from like A to B and get back on track here? And in that, like that servitude piece of it, where you're talking about turn it into a teachable moment, what I'm visualizing is like people in Mike's office know he's the guy. He's, got his name on the door. He's making decisions. He's doing, a lot of things behind the scenes to hold this vehicle up in place. But at the same time, you're coming at it from a perspective of like, hey, we're gonna learn and grow through those experiences. And then how about the agency owner who's held hostage to somebody right now? Literally, they've got, let's say, 2 salespeople, 1 service. One of their salespeople is not only not selling a lot, maybe they're even hurting the business, the reputation with the customers. Maybe they're rubbing off their toxic traits on the rest of the team, right? And I think I talked to a lot of agency owners who have that team member, but then they're in the situation of having, let's say, like in your world, right? Like a variable comp target. And they're like, well, they do write 15 items a month. And if I cut them, I might miss my target. And there's this like thing that goes on for months. Sometimes I see where I call it being held hostage to your team. They're held hostage to this person and they put so much time and energy into that. I mean, what kind of advice would you give somebody who's stuck in that rut of like, I can't cut them. That's what they think, because I'm going to go too far backwards on my income that, that's more harmful than just, I guess, putting up with it for a while, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's just the wrong person. And, we've all been in that situation to a limited degree, but like, someone told me pretty early on, and it's great not coming from insurance because, I leaned on a lot of people when I first started and some people that were very smart and gave me some really good advice. And someone told me once, if you have that person in the seat that's doing 15 items a month, you're taking up that seat that could be somebody that's doing 50 items a month. And so I stuck to that pretty early on. And also one of the guy that used to be our, regional leader here in Ohio, he said, and this always stuck with me. He said, once you get the notion that you should fire someone, you should go ahead and do it. Like once you get the notion that you should fire someone, you should just go ahead and pull the trigger on that. And I really believe that's true, because that person, never be held hostage by anybody. I had an office manager when I had 3 offices, and she, I was going to get coffee one day and she jumped in. She's like, hey, can I go with you? And that was very unusual. That had never happened. Okay, come on, you can come with me. And she was writing, 65 items a month, and she quit. Like she gave me her notice, like on the way to this coffee shop and stuff. I thought it was going to destroy us as an office, because she was the top writer in that office of the 3 offices. And once she left, we got some other people in there, and we actually started writing more business. So every time that's happened to me in 16 years of doing this, it's always been a positive thing. So don't be afraid. You have to lead with courage, and sometimes that feels a little funny, and you have to pray about it and get your mind right. But you have to know, like, you got to go forward with confidence no matter what. I've been I've had 3 offices with, 25 people, and I've sat in offices alone, and I've had complete walkouts in some offices, and no matter what, I mean, I just pray about it, and I try to just, lead with courage, and even if you're having that bad day and you're like, man, that feels like that's gonna suck on the back end. And you just, you gotta like smile through it and like never let them see you sweat as a leader. Like you can't let people know like, oh, I'm really worried about that. You're almost always, it's going to be a better thing for you. You get rid of that toxic person. I mean, not almost always, it always is going to be better if you get rid of that toxic person, that low riding individual. Get them out of there, get somebody else in there new. You'll be surprised how fast the turnaround is and how fast you can get somebody in there doing better.
Man, the 2-year agent, the 3-year agent, the 7-year agent who's on here watching that, and you're like, that's me, because I talk to you guys, right? I talk to you guys every single week, and you're stuck in that spot. 16 years, had to go through multiple seasons of that, always coming out stronger. And I've heard that now from multiple successful owners of like, yeah, most would think you'd go backwards, but we actually made forward progress. We freed up. So like people don't talk about the metaphysical stuff that is not just top line revenue and spreadsheets. It's like you're saying, culture. It's the energy body of the agency. Like you improve the energy, just like in your own life. You start going to the gym at 5 a.m. You start getting more disciplined with your schedule. Are you going to sell more? Yeah, you're going to sell more. So like giving your team that gift and that lift of like, no, I'll step in. And I see it almost as like protecting the good team members too. It's like you kind of owe them like the respect to be like, I'm not going to allow you guys to work in an environment where I just let this happen. Nobody wants that.
It's very demotivating for people, for your good producers. I mean, that poison is very demotivating. And, I mean, honestly speaking, like the metaphysical stuff that, as you mentioned, I mean, any new agent can get on here. Like they can do a half hour with you, Andy. You're fantastic. And like, I mean, he's worked with my team, and like, I mean, he can teach you like the job pretty much in a half hour on the phone. If he was on the team on the phone with your team for a half hour, an hour, he could teach you pretty much how to run your agency. What he can't teach you is like, the intangibles, the leadership. I mean, like being strong, like leading by example. Those things are like inherent in you, or you have to learn them if you're going to be an agency owner. You're going to be successful.
I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, and you're right. It definitely is. And one of the things that you've brought up a couple of times now, right, is faith and God. And we in our businesses and like also just our family have seen just some mountains moved in the last couple of years when you invite God into your business, into your life. I'm curious if you have any really cool, testimonials, any moments maybe over the last, decade or so where you saw God do something in your business that was, not of your own work. You know what I mean? I'd love just to glorify God a bit here as well. And think about what that's looked like in your business as well.
Yeah. And that's really like, it's something I hold very strongly to personally, because, just the way my life is, shaped up. I mean, I lost my mother when I was like 13 years old, and kind of like grew up without a mom and stuff. So like, it was like a thing that, I had to kind of grab onto God. I went kind of the other way, kind of went to the wild side for a bit, and then came back. My dad is a cop and an ordained Southern Baptist minister. And so for me, man, it just like, you go away from your faith. I think everybody at some point in time in their life, I mean, I went away from my faith for a long time and then kind of came back and said, that's just, I mean, I'm just in awe of God every day, of the things that like he's blessed me with. And in this business, like there's no way. I think to myself, sometimes I'm like surprised at how well we're doing, because I mean, you put the work in, but you're just like, man, like you're just surprised that like, like this shouldn't have gone this well, but it did. And I just think that, I pray about it every day. It's a very awesome responsibility to have, the lives of 15, 20, 25 people, and the livelihood and their livelihood of their families underneath you. And so I pray about it every day, and this to, ask God to give me the wisdom and fortitude to be a good leader and to like do the right things, not just the right thing for the business, but the right thing for people. And there's just been, I mean, honestly, so many things that I feel like are just miracles in my life, and it's, my kids, I mean, I, paid for my kids' college. I couldn't have done that as a cop, I mean, like my grandkids are, like they're all, everybody's doing really well and stuff. And that is just like a blessing that I never saw. I mean, I went to college and I slept on the couches at I worked midnight, slept on the couches at the university, and went to my classes, and then so really really struggled. So I think like just grabbing back onto my faith and just the fact that I'm alive and have had bullets within that close to my head, and shootouts and stuff. I mean, I'm just thankful every day, and like there's nothing. I just try to be a good example and a good leader. I mean, there's nothing like God's grace to, none of this matters at the end of the day. It's just like, his grace and forgiveness is everything.
And thank you for that. You're right. It sounds crazy to say. We're on a show, we're talking about expertise and how to grow the business. And we're like, but at the same time, none of it actually matters. I agree with you though. I stumbled on last night a photo of this 256 gigapixel image they took somewhere in the Milky Way. And you can zoom in and you can see the depth and the beauty and the miracle of the universe, just a small slice of it. And I'm sitting here going, so I had 900 things in my head before that photo. What could I have done better today? How am I going to handle that situation tomorrow? A lot of us kind of get stuck in our own head. And then I looked at that image and I was like, okay, there's a much bigger plan. There's a lot of things at play here that goes so far beyond even our community or our state or our government, that are just so much bigger. And it's really cool to, see businesses like yours that I think are probably very unapologetic in their faith. And it's drawing the right people into the business that share that faith with you. But being able to do that in a very genuine way. It's not like, weird for people to talk with you about it or weird for customers. I'm sure it's just part of your creed and who you guys are as humans, first and foremost. And I think that's like really important to stay true to your path and, let people know you for you and be genuine. And we always say here, like David would say it as well, like we're going to attract our tribe. You're going to attract the right people into your business and be forthright about it. So I appreciate hearing all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's one thing that like, I just never, I mean, it just gives me comfort every day because this is like, you hear so many things about PTSD and about, like a lot of my friends are fighting that battle. They're suicidal and they crawl into a bottle or they just let themselves go. And a lot of the SWAT guys, because you're so active and you've seen so many things and so, I mean, I'm just so appreciative of my faith and to keep me, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I'm so thankful to be on a good path and stuff. And that's all God's work. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And another thing I saw too is like your community involvement and the Ray Lynch Award. And so one of the things I'm curious about is like, when you think about the mission within the agency, more than just serving your customers and serving your team, when and where and how did like the idea of community impact kind of enter your brain? And how do you, I would say like kind of balance that with the immense schedule you have and the people that you serve and that serve you, so on and so forth. Can you talk to a little bit just about like that intentionality in your business, how that's manifested? Just, I'd love to know a little bit more under the hood, because that's not an accidental award, right? That's very like, I don't know if many people know, and maybe you can explain to them a bit of what's involved with that, but I just want to dive a little bit deeper into that, part of your business as well.
Yeah. And that for me is like, so, I like early on when I found out about like the grant and the Ray Lynch Award and all that stuff, I was like, that's really a cool thing that, the company will give money out like to the things that you believe in. So, somebody said early on, like, just do the things that you're personally passionate about. So then, the year I won, we've been doing things for years. I mean, with the law enforcement memorial here in Dayton, some of my brothers and sisters that were killed in the line of duty, we do a community project with them every year to memorialize them. And we work with like the Down Syndrome Association. We play baseball with special needs kids in the Challenger League here. And then the American Heart Association, which is really close to me because, my mom died in a heart transplant when I was 13. And so that was something that was really like near and dear to me. So that's what, I was working with them, and that's what was cited for the Ray Lynch Award, which is very like, I really like, I don't know, it was really cathartic for me to like, to feel like I gave back to that, because it was such a hard thing. So I think like if you're not, so agents call me all the time. They're like, hey man, how do you do this? And like, what do you do? And like, it's just so like, it's so easy, but it's like so much part of our culture because I mean, I got to tell you, Andy, like when, in police work, like, I mean, I worked for some guys that were like kind of scumbags. I mean, they were just doing things like, and they were as a 18-year-old or, 18-year-old kid come into that profession. I mean, if I followed the example of these guys, I mean, I'd be out drinking and, messing around, like doing things that are just not Christian in nature. And so like in my agency, not only do I try to treat them to have like or teach them to have a good moral compass and to be good people and like, what it takes to be a man, to be like the guys that work for me, a lot of young guys, like this is what you need to do. This is how you manage your finances. This is how, and just be like a personal mentor to them. But also like my expectation quietly is that they will give back to their community. We give a scholarship every year. I started that. We've given out like 36 scholarships now to high school seniors. And that's not from Allstate. That's out of my pocket. And we give anywhere from 2 to 5 a year. But part of that is they have to have a 3.0 GPA. They have to be going to college, and they also have to write a 3-page essay on how they gave back to their community during their time in high school. And it can't be like, oh, I coached, gymnastics at the local gym and got paid for it. It has to be like, what did you do? Did you work with kids? Did you give back to somebody? Because giving back is everything. And it's like, it isn't going to get you to heaven, but it sure is going to like change your, and to be a SWAT guy and to be like, the people are like, oh, you don't like, I don't believe you're a SWAT guy because you're, because you're just not like the Kate, whatever. But I think that like, as a human being, as a Christian, I think you have to like, it's our job to take care of our fellow man. And man, it's so rewarding to get out there and like to be a buddy and play, baseball with those kids and like see their parents and like just see the struggle that those families go through on a daily basis. None of this is anything. Like my problems are so stupid and little compared to their problems, and it just moves you to a whole different place in your life. And you talk about humility and like just making you a better human being. It'll do it for you.
Man, I thank you so much for the way that you put that and explain that, especially the part about like you have an expectation of the people that surround you to like get involved in that. I love that. I love that you put it that way. It's like as a leader, like I expect you to get involved in this is really something that I think is a rarity. But being part of an organization that I can genuinely say our ownership is built the same exact way. When those conversations happen with like, let's say the entire company, I actually think people get far more bought in, not just to the leadership, right? But to the mission of what we're doing and like being a for-purpose business. It even, I think, impacts typical sales guy. I think it impacts your sales as well. Not because, people see us in the community and they love us. Sure, that might happen, but it's more like you're training yourself to be in a position of servitude and to have a purpose higher than just making a sale. And so I think like anything you do, it's going to build a muscle, and that muscle of servitude, I see oftentimes transform the way that you sell, because now you're going into it with an act of servitude, the way you sell insurance, the way that you handle a claim. It's no longer, we need to hit our VC target. It's like, no, we're doing something much bigger here as a team. We're serving people in the community. We're serving our customers. We have discipline. Like when you start to really paint the picture of like everything you just laid out, right? It paints a really good picture for why you've seen so much success. It's completely not accidental, but even that community piece of it really, really plays in. So I appreciate that a lot. And I appreciate that you do that with your people, because not all of them have that mom, that dad, that aunt, uncle that like kind of taught them that. And, to have a leader that's going to kind of steer them in that direction will change their life literally forever. So that's incredible, Mike.
Thank you so much. And honestly, like, and it's a good litmus test as an owner. We had one person one time that was, had been with us for years, and that person just refused to come out and do those community projects with us and stuff. And they ended up leaving shortly after but it was really a good, like, and I had complaints about that person, like, oh, like they're going outside the lead rotation. They're doing things that are self-serving and all that. And it's like, it's a very telling thing when you're, like, it says a lot about, the people who are willing to do it and not do it. And I think everybody that does it, like, if you're not doing it now, like, start doing it, because like, you'll appreciate that so much. And every organization in your town, like, if you've been thinking about it, just go do it, because they're going to love you and they're so much going to appreciate the help.
That's huge. Yeah. Everything is everything, right? The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So
that's right. Amen, brother. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I got a question about, well, let me paint it this way. I spoke with an agent owner yesterday who's just entering the insurance space from a world of IT. So he's worked on computers, done an IT firm for like 20 years. He's getting an agency out in the Midwest. And, he's got spreadsheet upon spreadsheet. He was showing me like, this is my plan. I got like, I'm going to do this many direct mail. I'm going to do this much telemarketing with this many internet leads. And he had like, a very financial based, metric heavy plan. Right. And he's like, I know this isn't perfect, but like, it's going to give me something to shoot for. But I think for him, right, I'm just using him as an example. 90% of his thought process right now is I can sort of solve the initial 90-day ramp up in my business through planning my marketing dollars, through spreadsheets, and understanding my funnels. And like, that's most of the focus, right? Almost nothing of what we've talked about so far today has had anything to do with, I mean, we could, right? But it hasn't had anything to do with a lead source, a cost of acquisition. That all matters.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious, like if you were to speak with him, or you're maybe speaking to the audience of anybody who is in their first like couple of weeks of planning out that next agency launch, what would you recommend they get laser focused on and get intentional about to make sure in that first 90 days, let's say, they don't crash and burn?
Yeah, I mean, it's good that I like, it's good that I like my undergrad is like liberal arts or whatever, like I have a communication degree and I'm not like, it wasn't like very heavy on the analytical side. I've seen guys and I've talked to guys who are just like, oh, like I need to like measure this and do that, like I need to like know every little thing and like and one of my managers now is like that. She's very analytical and she wants to like measure every little thing. But I'm like, you can measure yourself into the ground. You have to like you pay attention to the metrics that count. Like how many phone calls are you making? Like what's your talk time? What are the important things? But like, and you got to measure your ROI, but also like you can over measure. Like you got to like, you got to make the biscuits, right? Like you can't like, like you gotta, somebody's got to make the biscuits. Like you got to get out there and do the work. And so measuring's great but also like I work alongside my people. I still like sell on occasion, like the personal referrals or whatever, just to show them that like, because I want to know. I still want to know. I had an agent call me one time and she is going out of business and like she owned multiple businesses and stuff. And she's like crying. She's like, yeah, I don't even know how to change a car on a policy. I said, well, I don't ever want to be that person. So you got to like, I mean, measuring's great, but also like get there and do the work, get in the, like it's the talking to people. It's the relating to people. It's like, you can measure yourself to death, but like the biggest thing is like like work on like the boots on the ground type stuff, like having conversations and like selling and like just relating to people, be personable. Don't be transactional on the phone. Like teach your team. Like you got to lead your team first and then measure what you're doing later on. There'll be time for that, but the biggest focus should be on like actually, doing the boots on the ground work.
And thank you for that very much. No, that's very, very telling. And, that's maybe the second or third time I've heard that from a high performing agency. And I try to string together when I hear something 2 or 3 times from the right source, right? It's like, boom. Okay. That's a well-baked idea. And that's one thing I've heard a lot of times is the absence in the business, not being in the trenches, not understanding the business from the inside out. And, how can you expect your team to follow your lead if there's nobody leading by example? But just being in touch with your business as well. Because, I see a lot of times there's frustrations among sales or service team members because there's something in the system or the pitch or something that's maybe broken. And unless that leader gets all the way down in the weeds with them, they're not going to experience that and be able to fix it. And it sounds more like a complaint. It sounds more like, something they don't need to be involved in. But I love that you get in the trenches every day and you're working alongside them.
Well, it kills a lot of excuses because they know that if I'm down there doing, like, if I know how things work, like if you don't know how the biscuits are made, then you're like, well, this is not working. That doesn't, that doesn't hold up in me because I know, I do the work on occasion. I know how the stuff works. And so it kills a lot of excuses. And, the road to success is not paved with excuses. You gotta keep on going, Yeah,
100%. Well, Mike, as we kind of go into the final section of the show, I wanted to ask you in terms of, your legacy and, let's say 20 years from now, 30 years from now, whatever, right? I don't know all your plans and what your timeline looks like, but let's say you're sitting around on the porch and you're in your late 80s, sipping on some tea, hanging out with some family, and you're thinking back to like, man, those Allstate days. What is the legacy, the impact that like you're working towards today that you hope to leave behind in the future?
I think that like, I think it's important to just, what is it, like Dr. Seuss or somebody said, like, people, I don't know, Dr. Seuss he's a prophet, a poet, so I mean, but somebody said once, and maybe it wasn't him, but people don't always remember, like what you did, but they make you, they remember how you made them feel. And I think that it's important to, like, I don't know. And I think that too with my team too. Like I always want them to look at me and say, he was a good man. He did the right thing. Like he always he taught us to do the right thing, and we always did. And I took lessons from him in my life, and I incorporated that. And if that's how that goes, then, I will be really happy if people say, Mike was a good guy, and he taught me some things, and they were always the right thing. I always knew him to try to do the right thing. And in law enforcement, we have a saying, as a trainer, I would teach in the police academy, and I would tell these cadets, like, you are defined, if you have a 30-year career, you're going to be defined by about 5 incidents in your career. And when they say, Mike Hild, when he was with the sheriff's office, like remember he did this thing, and man, he stood there, his guy, like his partner was getting fired at, and he didn't run off or leave him hanging. Like he had his back and stuff. And so you have about five things in your career, and from a law enforcement perspective, and it does carry over to the insurance industry. There are things in your career that are going to be defining moments in your career, and things that define you as a person to your family and friends. And I hope that those things are always that I did the right thing, left something good, and did it for God.
And that's fantastic. And I really, really, really appreciate your time on this today. I want to do a quick summary for our audience, because one of the things that I'm really impressed by with the way you guys operate is that the principles you operate on, the core values, the magic behind the scenes for you guys, is everything I would ever hope for an agency. Because it's not going back to like the spreadsheet thing. It's not, well, we put X amount into this marketing, it renders this close rate, thus we are successful, right? Like your success as an agency goes far beyond that. But I also think you've created a bulletproof agency. Like no matter what economy happens over the next 2, 5, 10 years, if you look at the way that he's built his agency, right? There's vision being passed on. So his team is bought into the vision, even from an interview. There's preparation and discipline going into preparing his team for situations, and taking their basically mind where their body might need to go one day, which I love that phrase. Command presence, owning the conversation. You look at the level of discipline and the training, but then you roll into like this compassionate, leadership of, hey, I'm going to hold people accountable, but also like make teachable moments out of it and allow the right people to be on my team and work together. I mean, you walk into your office, I'm sure it's a lot more than just an insurance agency. It's a family. It sounds like it's a unit of individuals who are built for the long haul. So I'm really impressed by what you've built, Mike. I think this is extremely valuable, and I'm sure there's a lot of agency owners and entrepreneurs in general who are going to take away a lot from this. But I just want to thank you so much for coming on today, and really just wish you guys continued success, because you definitely deserve it.
Thank you so much, Andy. Really a lot of respect for you and Dave, and you guys are great, man. I appreciate everything you do for agents, and man, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And for our audience here with us today, I'm going to take us out with some SWAT music. I mean, I've got to. So if you guys see that, that means Mike and I are on to the next thing. But we'll be back next week, more than likely. And it might be, we'll see, maybe a surprise kind of on-site show at one of the conferences going on next week. And then the week after that, we've got one of the leading actual dental entrepreneur influencers in the space, going to bring in what he's learned being one of the leading dentists in the country into the insurance space. And we're preparing that right now for you guys. So we got some exciting episodes coming up, but for you, Mike, man, this was amazing. Great to have you. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day there.
Thanks, Andy. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.